Some killers run. Some hide behind smiles, neighbors, the illusion of a normal life. But the ones we remember, the ones we fear most, they confess. In sterile rooms under harsh lights, they speak the unspeakable. Their voices? Shaky, calm, sometimes terrifyingly casual. But once the words leave their mouths, there's no pulling them back. These confessions echo through police files, courtroom transcripts, and the darkest corners of human memory. Welcome to Grim Vault, where the stories the world tried to bury refuse to stay buried. In this episode, we unlock 15 of the most disturbing, unforgettable murder confessions ever recorded. No filters, no mercy, just true horror. Brace yourself, because the darkest truths are the ones they choose to tell. 1. Chris Watts, the family man who killed everything. The Watts family looked perfect. Frederick, Colorado, smiling photos, kids laughing, a third child on the way. Yet, beneath the polished surface, the facade was already falling apart. In August 2018, Shanann Watts and her daughters, Bella and Celeste, vanished without warning. Chris Watts, the devoted husband, the smiling father, stood on television pleading for their safe return. But investigators saw through the performance. Days later, they found Shanann's body at a remote oil site, wrapped in a sheet. Nearby, the remains of his daughters hidden in storage tanks like an afterthought. Inside the interrogation room, Watts confessed. His voice? Flat, detached. He described killing Shanann, then his daughters. Bella's final words were barely a whisper. "Daddy, no!" It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't an intruder. It was the man they trusted most, the one who promised to protect them, tearing their world apart. The monster wasn't lurking in the shadows. He lived in their home. Murder didn't just end their lives, it shattered the very walls meant to protect them. And the people we trust most sometimes become the ones we should fear. 2. Dennis Rader, the mask of normalcy worn by a killer. For decades, Wichita lived with a ghost, a killer who called himself BTK. Bind, torture, kill. The man behind it? Dennis Rader, family man, church leader, city employee. To neighbors, he was ordinary. Behind closed doors, he planned horror with chilling precision. When police finally arrested him, they expected denial or regret. They got neither. In the interrogation room, Rader casually presented diagrams, notes, floor plans, meticulously documenting his crimes like a project. Pointing to a hand-drawn map, he even smirked. "You missed a window." His confession wasn't emotional, it was methodical, as calculated as his murders. For years, Rader returned home to his family, living quietly among the very people he terrorized. And his final confession left Wichita wondering, how many more secrets can a mask of normality conceal? 3. Ted Bundy, the charmer who hid a nightmare. Ted Bundy was the nightmare no one saw coming. He didn't fit the mold. Law student, clean-cut, charismatic. His disarming smile, measured warmth, and effortless conversation hid something far more dangerous. For years, Bundy moved through crowds unnoticed, while women vanished. His charm, a weapon. His intelligence, a shield. His mask? Flawless. Until the performance slipped and the monster surfaced. In his final days on death row, Bundy sat with investigators, posture composed, eyes flat, voice calm. He confessed, but only in fragments. Partial truths, slivers of horror, carefully doled out to torment the families still searching for answers. There were many, he admitted. Even facing execution, Bundy never gave up control. He blamed violent media, made excuses, deflected. It was classic Bundy: distract, deceive, dominate. The most chilling part? He knew exactly what he was doing. Teasing unknown victims, hinting at undiscovered graves, keeping the final pieces for himself. He took those answers to the grave. That was always his plan. And decades later, one question still haunts those who hunted him. How many daughters, sisters, and friends were never found because he refused to say their names? 4. Ed Kemper, the brilliant mind that turned against itself. Ed Kemper didn't look like a killer. At 6'9", with a quiet voice and genius-level IQ, he seemed more professor than predator. But behind that calm exterior, something was deeply broken. At 15, Kemper killed his grandparents. He called it an experiment. Declared rehabilitated, he was released, and the murders resumed. Hitchhikers vanished along California highways. College students disappeared, and Big Ed smiled, even helping police with their own investigation. In 1973, Kemper walked into a police station and confessed. His words? Cold, detailed, emotionless. He described dismemberments, mutilations, even arguing with his mother's severed head. If I hadn't turned myself in, I'd still be out there, he warned. Efficient, calculated, deadly. His confession revealed the most chilling truth. Some monsters stop only when they choose to. 5. Aileen Wuornos, a life twisted by hurt and by hate. In every mugshot and courtroom clip, Aileen Wuornos' eyes told two stories: rage and unspoken sorrow. Her face became tabloid shorthand, the highway huntress, the damsel of death. But behind the headlines was someone shaped by survival. Abandonment, abuse, rejection, violence followed. By the late 80s, Florida's highways weren't just roads to Aileen. They were escape routes. Motel to motel, forgotten towns for forgotten people. Between 1989 and 1990, 7 men were found dead along those highways, shot and left like debris. Wuornos became a rare headline, a female serial killer, a monster in plain sight. But her confession wasn't cold. It was raw, fractured. Her voice cracked as she described the killings. She claimed self-defense, said they tried to hurt her, but the contradictions bled through. Sometimes, I shot them because I was scared, she whispered. And other times, I shot them because I hated them. Her words revealed more than a killer. They showed how a broken world can twist a person, and how that person can twist back. Her story divided the public. Monster? Victim? Both? Wuornos was executed in 2002. Her final words? "I'll be back," like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th. Her story ended there. But those 7 lives ended without answers. And the questions still haunt those empty roads. 6. Jeffrey Dahmer, the monster next door. July 1991. Milwaukee police knocked on the door of apartment 213 and walked into a nightmare. The smell hit them first. Rot, chemicals, death thick in the air. Inside, they uncovered horrors that defied belief. Remains in the fridge, skulls on shelves, Polaroids documenting bodies in stages of mutilation. The man behind it? Jeffrey Dahmer. Polite, composed, and terrifyingly detached. Dahmer confessed to luring men with promises of companionship, only to drug, murder, and in some cases, consume them. His twisted experiments to create what he called living zombies revealed an obsession with control, driven by profound isolation and fractured desire. "I should have stopped, but I couldn't," he admitted. But perhaps the most disturbing truth? Dahmer lived among neighbors, shared food, made small talk. For years, no one realized they were living beside a nightmare, disguised as ordinary life. Behind apartment 213 was more than a crime scene. It was years of silence finally broken. Conarach Synthasmphon was 14. He escaped, briefly, but police sent him back. He never made it out again. Some killers crave silence, others crave the spotlight. 7. Luca Magnotta, murder for the spotlight. The internet was never designed for this, a place where horror could be edited, uploaded, and played on loop. In 2012, a video surfaced. Some thought it was a hoax, a grim piece of performance art. It wasn't. Titled "One Lunatic, One Ice Pick," the video showed the brutal murder and dismemberment of a man. The violence wasn't accidental. It was staged. Deliberate lighting, careful framing. It was more production than crime scene. Behind it was Luca Rocco Magnotta, a failed model, internet persona, obsessed with fame, detached from consequence. For years, he chased attention with fake scandals and staged interviews, but when notoriety wasn't enough, he escalated. The manhunt spanned continents, Interpol alerts, global headlines, but Magnotta wasn't hiding, he was watching himself trend. Authorities found him in a Berlin internet cafe, calmly reading articles about himself. In custody, his confession came cold, rehearsed. He dissected the killing like a director reviewing film, the angles, the symbolism, every grim choice. "You'll be watching me forever now," he whispered. And disturbingly, he was right. His face lingers online, the crime replaced dissected endlessly. But lost in the headlines is one name. Junlin, a student, a son, a human being erased for a killer's spotlight. In the echo chambers of the internet, Magnotta's prophecy still haunts us, a reminder that infamy never dies, it uploads. 8. The Manson family, brainwashed into bloodshed. Before the summer of 1969, Hollywood glittered with fame, fantasy, and illusion. By August, it reeked of blood. The Tatlabyanka murders didn't just shatter that illusion. They exposed a nightmare hiding in plain sight. 7 lives taken in a rampage so brutal it stunned a nation. And at the center wasn't a masked figure in the shadows. It was Charles Manson, no weapon in hand, just words. Words twisted into control. His followers, mostly young, lost, searching, found purpose in him. He turned that purpose into something monstrous. When they finally confessed, their words disturbed more than their crimes. In court, they smiled, they sang, they carved X's into their foreheads, a public mark of loyalty to the man they called a savior. Susan Atkins described stabbing pregnant actress Sharon Tate with chilling calm. It was a beautiful moment of awakening, she said, her eyes vacant from indoctrination. The world recoiled. But beneath the shock was a deeper, more unsettling truth. The real horror wasn't just the bloodshed, but how easily ordinary people became willing participants. Manson's legacy isn't just violence, it's a lingering question. Under the right influence, how easily could it happen again? And to whom? 9. Ian Brady, the predator who made grief a game. The moors of England stretch for miles, barren, windswept, empty, but not untouched. In the 1960s, that lonely, unforgiving landscape became a graveyard. Children vanished. Leslie Ann Downey, John Kilbride, and others, stolen by Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. To neighbors, they looked like an ordinary couple, quiet, unremarkable, blending into the background. But beneath their everyday routines, they plotted abduction, torture, and murder. Brady's confession? Cold, precise. He mapped the graves like coordinates, describing each death with unsettling ease, as if recounting steps in a routine. Yet even in prison, his cruelty lingered. Brady refused to reveal every burial site, using the agony of grieving families as leverage, forcing them to wander the moors in search of the children they lost. His final act wasn't murder, it was control. And to this day, those hills still hold secrets. Every silence he left behind was intentional. His cruelty didn't end with murder. It continued every time a family searched and found nothing. Some confessions disturb because of what they describe, others because of what they don't. For every name recorded, another remains missing. And for every voice that confesses, hundreds never speak. 10. Pedro Alonso Lopez, the ghost who stole hundreds of futures. Some crimes are so vast, so unthinkable they barely seem possible, let alone carried out by one man. But Pedro Alonso Lopez did exactly that, bearing the weight of hundreds of lives erased across mountains and borders. In the 1970s, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru became hunting grounds for a predator few suspected. Children vanished. Communities grieved, never imagining the true scale of the nightmare. When Lopez was finally arrested, investigators expected denial. Instead, his confession came freely, and with it, horror. Few believed at first. Over 300 young girls, abducted, assaulted, murdered, their innocence destroyed by a man who spoke of it all with chilling calm. "I liked them, young," innocent Lopez admitted. Their eyes still held hope. He described the shallow graves scattered across the Andes, forgotten scars hidden in the soil. And yet, justice failed. Legal loopholes set him free. Lopez disappeared, a ghost among the living. Decades later, his fate remains a mystery. Some say he's dead. Others believe he walks among crowds, unnoticed. For grieving families, the scars remain. For the world, his disappearance is a brutal reminder. Sometimes, monsters vanish, and they never look back. 11. The Dnepropetrovsk maniacs. When teenagers became death dealers. In 2007, the city of Dnipro, Ukraine became the stage for a nightmare, one orchestrated by two teenagers with cameras and hammers. Viktor Sayenko and Igor Supruniuk weren't driven by rage, revenge, or even ideology. They were driven by boredom and a craving for notoriety. For weeks, they hunted strangers at random. Cyclists, pensioners, passers-by. No motive, no pattern, just cruelty captured on video. One clip, later dubbed "Three Guys, One Hammer," showed a man being beaten to death with a hammer and screwdriver. The footage wasn't grainy or accidental. It was deliberate, framed, performed. When arrested, their confessions were chillingly casual. They spoke of murder like achievement. Each victim, another trophy, another file on a hard drive. Before targeting people, they practiced on animals, perfecting the rehearsal before opening night. They weren't remorseful, just proud. "We wanted to be famous," one said. "Now we are." The Dnepropetrovsk case wasn't just about brutality, it was about how easily violence can become content, how horror can become shareable, and how in the wrong hands a camera can turn into a weapon. Some killers hide behind walls, others step in front of a lens, smiling. 12. Richard Ramirez, the killer who worshipped terror. Summer 1984. Los Angeles turned from City of Angels to a city gripped by terror. For over a year, homes weren't safe. Locked doors weren't enough. The killer crept through neighborhoods at night, random, brutal, merciless. His name? Richard Ramirez, but the headlines called him something else, the Night Stalker. Ramirez didn't stalk specific victims. He hunted fear itself, breaking into homes, assaulting, torturing, murdering, all while invoking Satan and leaving communities paralyzed. When he was finally caught, his trial became a spectacle. Ramirez grinned for the cameras. He flashed a pentagram tattooed on his palm, and in the courtroom, with chilling defiance, he declared, "Hail Satan." His confession? It wasn't a sob story. It wasn't regret. It was a performance, one drenched in arrogance and evil. Even facing life behind bars, Ramirez never softened. He wore his crimes like a badge, taunting the families left behind. His death in 2013 from cancer didn't silence the legacy of terror, but his words still echo, a reminder that some monsters don't just haunt homes. His death ended his life, not the fear he planted in so many homes. 13. Anders Behring Breivik, the extremist who dressed murder as mission. On July 22, 2011, Norway's peace shattered in a single day. Anders Behring Breivik, wasn't hiding in shadows. He was clean-cut, calculated, and convinced he was on a mission. First, a bomb tore through Oslo's government district. 8 dead, dozens injured. Hours later, Breivik arrived on Utoya Island, a summer camp full of teenagers. One by one, he hunted them down. 77 lives were lost, most barely old enough to grasp the twisted ideology he claimed justified their deaths. His arrest didn't bring remorse, it brought performance. In court, Breivik called the massacre a necessary evil. His words weren't a confession, they were a manifesto. They betrayed their country, he said when asked why he killed children. His trial exposed an unsettling truth. Extremism doesn't always explode into chaos. Sometimes it walks in quietly, wearing a suit. Breivik's so-called confession wasn't closure. It was a message fueled by delusion, sharpened by hate. His name remains a brutal reminder. Terror doesn't always knock. And the most terrifying part? He wanted the world to listen. Some did. Which story stayed with you? Tell us in the comments, not for shock, but to remember those who never got to speak for themselves. At Grimvault, we don't just tell stories. We listen for the ones the world tried to silence. Subscribe to uncover the truths buried beneath headlines and hearsay. Stay curious, stay cautious, and above all, stay human. Because the darkness doesn't just leave a mark. Sometimes it stares back.